What if you hired an employee who never sleeps, never asks for a raise, never shows up late, and costs less than your morning coffee habit for an entire month? It sounds like a pitch from a late-night infomercial, but it's not. For 7 days straight, I treated ChatGPT exactly like a brand new hire. I gave it an onboarding brief, daily tasks, real deadlines, and at the end of the week, I sat down and gave it an actual performance review, the same way I'd evaluate a person. No cherry-picked screenshots, no editing out the failures. I'm going to walk you through every single day, including the parts where it genuinely let me down, because that's the part most AI can do everything videos conveniently leave out. Before we get into day 1, I want to lay out the exact rules I set for this experiment, because they matter for how you interpret the results. Rule 1. I only used ChatGPT. No other AI tools, no plugins, no special integrations, just the plain interface that anyone watching this can access today. Rule 2. Every single task had to be something a real employee at a small business would actually be asked to do. Nothing artificial, nothing designed to make it look impressive. Rule 3. And this is the important one. I graded the output the way I'd grade a human's work, with the same standards, the same expectations, and honestly, the same amount of patience I'd give someone in their first week. If it made a mistake, a new hire might also make. I noted it and moved on. If it made a mistake, a new hire never would. That got flagged as a real weakness. With that out of the way, let's start with day 1. Day 1 was onboarding, and this is usually the slowest part of hiring anyone. I sat down and wrote out a company brief, exactly like I would for a new employee. What the business does, who our ideal customer is, what problems we solve, and the tone of voice we use when we talk to people. I fed all of that into ChatGPT in one message and asked it to summarize the business back to me in its own words, just to check that it actually understood the assignment. Within about 15 seconds, it handed back a summary that was not only accurate, it was tighter and more focused than the version I originally wrote. That's the first thing that surprised me. And it's the first thing most people underestimate about AI in a business setting. It doesn't need 3 days to settle in, the way a human does. There's no awkward first week of learning where the coffee machine is. It's productive from the very first message, which changes the entire math on what onboarding even means anymore. Day 2, I handed it real customer support scenarios, actual types of complaints and questions a small business deals with every week. Things like a customer asking for a refund outside the return window, someone confused about a delayed shipment, and a lead asking for a discount before they'd commit. I asked for draft replies to all 5 in a single request. In under 2 minutes, I had 5 complete responses, each one addressing the specific concern instead of giving some generic templated answer. Now, I'll be honest, 2 of them needed tone adjustments. One reply was a little too apologetic for a situation where we genuinely didn't owe the customer anything, and I had to dial that back. But the structure, the logic, and the actual problem solving in every single reply was already there. If I compare this to a brand new human's second day on the job, handling 5 nuanced customer situations with only minor tone edits needed is a genuinely strong result. Most people don't hit that level of independence until week 2 or 3. Now here's where things get interesting, because day 3 is where it actually failed, and I think this is the most important part of the whole video. I asked for specific, current information about local competitor pricing in a particular market, and it gave me an answer. A confident, detailed, well-formatted answer. The only problem is that it was wrong. Not vaguely wrong, specifically, factually wrong, with numbers that simply weren't accurate for that market. And here's the dangerous part. If I hadn't already known the real numbers, I would have believed it completely, because it didn't hedge, it didn't say I'm not sure, it just answered like it knew. This is the single most important thing every business owner needs to understand before handing tasks to AI. ChatGPT, by default, is not a live research tool pulling real-time local data unless it's specifically connected to search or a database. It's a language model that's exceptional at reasoning, writing, and structuring information. But when it doesn't actually know something, it doesn't always tell you that clearly. Treat every specific number, date, or local fact it gives you as something to verify, not something to trust blindly. Day 4 was where it completely redeemed itself. I asked for a full week of social media captions and email subject lines, based on 3 simple bullet points about what we wanted to promote that week. This is normally the kind of task that eats up an entire afternoon, staring at a blank page, trying to come up with 12 different ways to say the same thing without sounding repetitive. Instead, in about 15 minutes of back and forth, including me asking for a few revisions on tone, I had 12 genuinely usable pieces of content. Not perfect, not ready to publish, without a final read-through, but usable, on brand, and varied enough that it didn't feel like the same caption copy-pasted 12 times. If you're a solo business owner, trying to stay consistent on social media, This single use case alone can give you back several hours every single week. Hours you could be spending on the parts of the business that actually require your specific expertise. On day 5, I tested something most people never even think to use AI for: writing standard operating procedures, or SOPs. If you've ever run a business, you know how painful it is to document your own processes. You know how to do the thing, but explaining it clearly enough that someone else could follow it without you micromanaging is a completely different skill. So I did something simple. I just talked. I described a process out loud, messy, unstructured, jumping around the way you naturally do when you're thinking through something you already know intuitively. Then I fed that rough explanation into ChatGPT and asked it to turn it into a clean, numbered SOP that a brand new hire could follow without any additional context. What came back was genuinely impressive: clear steps, logical order, even flagging a couple of places where my original explanation had gaps. That one task alone, documenting a single process, could easily have taken me a full afternoon to write from scratch. It took about 12 minutes. Day 6, I gave it a basic performance summary task, taking a set of raw numbers and turning them into a plain English report that a non-technical person could actually understand and act on. It nailed the structure immediately. Clear opening summary, key trends called out, a short list of recommended next steps at the end. Exactly the format you'd want. But I noticed something worth flagging here too. When I deliberately included one number that didn't quite add up with the others, an inconsistency a careful human analyst would probably catch, it didn't flag it. It just summarized the numbers as given, confidently, without questioning whether they were internally consistent. This reinforced the same lesson from day 3, just in a different context. Confidence in the output is not the same thing as accuracy in the output, and that distinction matters far more than most tutorials or hype videos are willing to admit. You are still the last line of defense on anything involving real numbers. Day 7, I did the actual performance review. I graded exactly the way I'd grade a human employee after their first week. Speed, a 9 out of 10. Genuinely outstanding. Nothing else comes close to this turnaround time on writing and structuring tasks. Creativity, an 8 out of 10. It surprised me more than once with angles and phrasing I wouldn't have thought of myself. Accuracy, a 6 out of 10. And that's the honest number after the failures on day 3 and 6. Good. But it absolutely needs a human checking anything factual or numerical before it goes out the door. Consistency, a 9 out of 10. It never had an off day. Never showed up tired. Never gave me a noticeably worse answer just because it was a Friday afternoon. If I average that out and compare it to a real human first week, I have to be honest with you, most human employees do not hit this combined level of output in their first 7 days on the job. That's not a knock on people. It's just a genuinely different kind of capability. So, would I hire ChatGPT again? Yes, without hesitation, but with a very specific understanding of the role it should play. It is not a replacement for judgment, and it is not a source of truth on anything specific, current, or numerical, without verification. What it is an extraordinarily fast, extraordinarily capable assistant that can absorb the repetitive, time-consuming 80% of daily business tasks, freeing you up to focus on the 20% that actually requires your experience, your relationships, and your judgment. The businesses that are winning with AI right now are not the ones expecting it to run the whole show unsupervised. They're the ones who've figured out exactly where to hand off work, and exactly where to keep their hands firmly on the wheel. That distinction is the entire game. If you want the exact prompts I used for every single day of this experiment, they're linked in the description, completely free. And if you're serious about using AI to actually grow a business, instead of just playing with it, subscribe. I'm posting a new AI business breakdown just like this one every single week.